Welcome everyone. Let's begin our lesson for today by going over our learning goals and success criteria. First, what are we learning? We're learning how to find the slope and y-intercept of a function from an equation, and we're learning how to graph linear functions using slope and y-intercept. How are we learning it? Through the Graphing Linear Functions Part 1 notes and the Graphing Linear Functions Part 1 assignment. When can we use the information in this lesson? We could use the information to calculate the amount of money in a savings account. How do we know we learned it? By getting a score of 4 on the Graphing Linear Functions Part 1 assignment. Now let's take a look at our agenda for today. We'll begin by going over the learning goals and success criteria. While we do that, you'll fill out your Get It Started. After you're done with your Get It Started, we'll go over it together to answer any questions you may have. Then we'll go over the Graphing Linear Functions Part 1 notes. And then I'll give you time to complete the Graphing Linear Functions Part 1 assignment, which is on IXL. Once you've completed the assignment, we'll take some time together to go over it and answer any questions that you may have. At the end of class, we'll go back over our learning goals and success criteria. And while we do that, you'll fill out your Before You Go. Your only homework for tonight is to continue working on the linear equations and inequality study guide and fill out any missing assignments that you may have. Let's take a look now at the Graphing Linear Functions Part 1 notes. We begin by taking a look at our learning goals and success criteria. Now let's talk about slope. What is slope? Slope is a rate of change involving x values and y values. Slope is known as for being the change in the dependent variable over the change in the independent variable. Now what does that really mean? So that really means that slope is the change in the y values over the change in the x values. So it's always y over x. And the next part you need to know is the y-intercept. The y-intercept is the point where the linear function crosses the y-axis. So we have a line here, and we can see that the y-axis goes here. So where do they intersect? Well, they intersect right there. That is what we call the y-intercept. So in this case, our y-intercept would be 2. Slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is written as y equals mx plus b. And what does that mean? M is the slope, and b is the y-intercept. Y and x are my variables that stay variables so that I can plug numbers in and see what they come out to be. So m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. Now, how can I remember that? The easiest way I remember this is m represents the slope because it's a slippery slope to get hung up on your x. So think about it in terms of relationships. People that are involved in relationships and they break up, there's usually that one person in that relationship that's always hanging on to the relationship that's already dead. That's the slope. That's M. It's a slippery slope to get hung up on your X. They are not together anymore. But the M is always trying to hang on. Notice how close they are. So M is trying to hang on, and it's a slippery slope to get hung up on your X. Now B, on the other hand, is alone. Not attached to anybody. B is lonely. And lonely people ask the questions, why am I alone? Why does no one want me? Why does no one think I'm cute? That's B. B is always asking the why questions. Those are the y-intercept questions. So that's the way I remember it. It's a slippery slope to get hung up on your X. And why am I alone? So that's the way I remember slope and y-intercept. Now, let's go ahead and pick out the slope and y-intercept from an equation. So we're given an equation, y equals 2x plus 4. And we want to know what is the slope of that line. Well, we know that the slope is the one that's attached to its x, right? So it's a slippery slope to get hung up on your x. So the one that's attached to the x in this case is 2. So the slope is 2. The y-intercept is the lonely one. Why am I alone? Well, the lonely one is 4. So my y-intercept is 4. So that's how I pick out the slope and y-intercept given an equation. Let's look at another example. We have y equals negative 3/2 x minus 3. Well, same thing. It's a slippery slope to get hung up on your x. So the slope is the one that's attached to the x, which is -3/2. So that's my slope. And my y-intercept is the lonely one. Well, the lonely one in this case is -3. So b is -3. So that's how I find the slope and y-intercept from an equation. Now, how do I graph a linear function? Well, first thing I need to do is pick out my slope and my y-intercept. Well, in this case, my slope is -1/2 because that's attached to the x. Now, my y-intercept, notice there's nothing here. There's no lonely people. So how do I say none in math terms? Well, that's 0. So my y-intercept is 0. So now when I graph this, the first step is I plot the y-intercept. Well, my y-intercept is 0. So I'm going to go along my y-axis and find 0, which is right here. And I plot my point. The next step is I'm going to use the slope to plot my second point. Remember, this is change in y over change in x, or you might have heard it in the past as rise over run. We're going to talk about it as change in y over change in x. So my change in y is -1. So I go down 1. And my change in x is 2, so I'm going to go to the right, 1, 2, and plot my point. So now I have my first 2 points. The next step is just to connect the dots and draw a line between them. So I'm going to connect the dots, and now I have a linear function that is graphed that goes through 0 and has a slope of -1/2. Now, what if I'm given 2 points and asked to find the slope? Well, first thing we need to remember is that coordinates are written in the form x and y, right? So the x goes first and the y goes second. And that slope is the change in the y over the change in the x. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these points and we're going to subtract the y values and put that as my numerator, and subtract the x values and put that as my denominator. So when I do that, I get 1 minus 2. Those are my y's, so that's my change in y. So my change in y is 1 minus 2. And my change in x is 2 minus 4. So that's change in y over change in x. Now when I do that, 1 minus 2 is -1. And 2 minus 4 is -2. And when I do that, a negative divided by a negative just becomes a positive. So this is just 1/2. So my slope for that line that goes through those 2 points is 1/2. Let's look at another example. So what is the slope of the line that passes through -3, -3, and 2, -6? Again, coordinates are written as x and y. So this is my x, this is my y, this is my x, this is my y. And slope is change in y over change in x. So I'm going to calculate that by subtracting my y values first. So -3 minus -6. And then I'm going to subtract my x values, which is -3 minus 2. So I get -3 minus -6 and -3 minus 2. And when I simplify, this really becomes plus positive. So -3 plus 6 is 3. And -3 minus 2 is -5. So it's 3 over -5, which is just -3/5. There's a video here also that shows you how to graph linear functions in Desmos. So you can go ahead and watch that. Let's talk now about how to check our work with linear equations using Desmos. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to desmos.com, just like this, and we're going to click on the link that says Graphing Calculator. And over here on the left side, we can enter the equation of any linear equation and it will graph it for us. So let's try y equals 2x minus 4. Well, as we can see, it graphs it for us. We can check that against whatever we did on our assignment now. And you can do it this way. Let's say we had an equation, though, that wasn't in slope-intercept form. We can still graph that on here and check our work. So let's say it was 4x minus 2y is equal to 8. And we can see that that's actually the same as this one. But we can look at this and check our work this way as well. It still graphed the equation in slope-intercept form, even though the equation we put in is not in slope-intercept form. So this is one way that you can check your work using Desmos to find linear equations. Let's talk now about how to access your assignments on IXL using SBLink. So what you'll do is you'll click on the link that takes you to your SBLink, which should look like this, and you're going to log in the same way you would log into your computer. So the first part for your username is going to be the first part of your email address without the @sbcusd.ca.us. So it should be your last name, first initial, middle initial, and then the last four of your student ID. Then for your password, it's the same password you use to log into your Chromebook. From there, you'll go ahead and click Sign In. And it should take you to a page that looks kind of like this. You're going to go find the link that says IXL, which is right here. And I'm going to go ahead and click on that link. And it should take me to the IXL login page. So it should look like this. At the top right corner, it should say welcome and then your name. If it does not say your name, then you're not logged in and you won't receive credit for your work. As long as this is good, you can go ahead and close that tab out. And then you can go to your Google Classroom. And then you'll go and find the activity, which is here. And I'm going to click on the IXL link right here. And this will take me to the assignment that I need to complete. So that's how you log into your assignments on IXL using SBLink. Let's take a look now at the Graphing Linear Functions Part 1 assignment. So if you look at the assignment, at the very top of the page we have our learning goals and success criteria. If we continue to scroll down, it gives us a link to access the SBLink. So you'll click on that link and sign in. You'll click on this link here, which takes us to the IXL page, which is here. And it should take you to an assignment that looks like this. So it asks us to graph the line using the slope and the y-intercept. So in this case, our slope is -1/7, and our y-intercept is 1. So we're going to go ahead and plot the y-intercept first. So I'm going to go along the y-axis and find 1, which is right there, and I plot that point. Then I'm going to plot my second point using the slope. So it's change in y over change in x. So my change in y is -1, so I'm going to go down 1. And my change in x is +7, so I'm going to go to the right 7. And I'm going to plot that point. Once I do that, I'm going to scroll down and click Submit. It tells me I did a good job, my SMART score went up, and my timer started, and now it sends me on to the next question. So now I'm going to keep answering these questions. So the next one has a y-intercept of 7, so I'm going to go here to 7 and plot that point. And my slope, there's no number in front, but there is an x. There's one x there. So 1x is the same thing as saying that the slope is 1, which is 1 over 1. So I'm going to go up 1 and to the right 1. And I click there. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit Submit. It tells me I did a good job again and sends me on to the next one. My SMART score continues to rise. Now, if I were to get a question wrong, my SMART score would come down. That's okay. Just keep answering questions until you get your SMART score up. Remember, you need to have a SMART score of 80 to get a 4 on this assignment. You'll just keep working until you get the SMART score that you want. Once you're done with the assignment, you'll go back to your Google form and click Next. This will send you to your Before You Go. You'll go ahead and fill out your Before You Go and then submit your work on Google Classroom.